Hey guys, I am here with my beautiful friend Holly Scarsella. Holly is the most incredible human, mum, business owner, founder, and I'm so excited to get into her story. She founded the brand Pampelone, which was a huge success, massive resort wear business, and she just shares so many insights with me on a regular basis. She does not gatekeep. She is so generous with her wisdom, and I just can't wait for you to hear Holly's story. So welcome, Holly.
Thanks, you make me blush with all of that. Oh my goodness. Thank you. I think my kids this morning called me like bumhead about 5 times. So actually coming in to hear that, I mean, that's what I need to hear to like build me up in the morning.
We're back on track. Oh, I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
So Holly has actually helped me so much with my business. We met years ago, didn't we?
Years ago. We actually met years ago when you had your previous business, Pilly and Kiki.
Yeah, but do you know what our first conversation was?
Tell me.
So it was when you had Pampelone and I was just starting Pilly and Kiki.
Yes.
And I had seen you on a panel. I think it was with a
Red magazine. Or Marie Claire, one of those, yeah.
Yeah, and I had ordered from Pampelone, and I just thought the whole customer experience, seeing you on the panel and then having the customer experience was so good. So I actually emailed you. Do you remember? And I was but you emailed me back.
Oh my God, my brain is like...
a nice message, and you were like, "You've made my day." But this was years ago. I don't think we've
so
ever
funny. I love that we're like actual friends now, and I don't know that.
I know, but
That's so funny.
It just came to me.
Oh, thanks.
And then we have so many mutual friends. But yeah, I just want you to take us back to how you actually started Pampelone, because I think I've had so many questions for you, but how to start is such a big one.
Such a big one.
Yeah, I know.
I think my background is a bit of an odd one. I think some people in business say you have to be so passionate about something, and obviously there's a route to market where that is so valid and such an important thing, where, you know, where it's super authentic, and, you know, it's something you know, for example, with you in the Pilates, it's so incredible. You had your car crash, you've trained to be this teacher, you're amazing, and you embody this thing, which is incredible. But that wasn't the way for me, and that's also okay. And I think that's really important for people to know as well. My background was in PR. I was a publicist. I worked for some really big retail brands like Tiffany & Co, UGG Australia. I was in an agency doing all of that, and what was really great learning and there was essentially how to market a brand. And I think when you have worked in PR, anyone that's ever worked in PR and marketing, I think we kind of all say the same. Once you've done that, you can kind of do anything. And I think that goes back to the age-old Bill Gates quote that he says if he had $1 left in his business, he'd spend it on PR, because essentially you can have the best product in the world, but if people don't know about it, then who cares? Yeah. And that's a principle that I always go back to. So that was great, working in PR, working and seeing how big businesses build their brands and market them. I also was on the PR team for Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx, when she was on front cover of Forbes as the world's first female self-made billionaire under 30, which under 30.
So you worked closely with Sarah.
So, you know, I was there for her interviews. I didn't work too closely with her specifically, but I was there.
She
is incredible. And it really, genuinely, that week, she came over from Atlanta and we did this week of interviews, and it just gave me so much drive to want to be an entrepreneur and want to start my own business. And I had no idea what I wanted to do, what field it would be in, but it really spurred that thought in my mind that I knew I wanted. And so I was like, I want my business. I want to be talking about my business and, you know, all of this stuff. So I started thinking about it, and I researched so many different things, and I genuinely didn't tell anyone. I think I didn't even tell my husband. I just started doing loads of like research into different things. And like, firstly, it was like faux fur. I was like, there was no like nice faux fur around, and I started doing loads of research into it. And then I realized that there was another brand doing exactly the same thing. So that didn't work. But it was kind of on my radar for years. Yeah. And even though I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, my mind was really open to the fact that I knew I wanted to start a business. So I think when your mind's open to it, everything I did, ever I went, you're noticing things, you're picking things up. And for anyone that's looking to start a business, I think being in that mindset is actually really important, because, you know, there could be a conversation you'd have with someone without that mindset that you just have a very normal conversation when you know you're looking to do the same. Like, for example, you know, I was in-house at Astley Clark at this point, the British jewellery brand, doing their PR. And I used to spend every lunch down in the picking and packing warehouse asking them the randomest questions about weights, Royal Mail, who picks it up, how do the customers get this, how does customer service work, which I would never have previously cared about if I didn't know that it was, a means to
kind
something
of building
that
bringing all the pieces together.
Exactly. So I knew I wanted to do something. I didn't know what it was. And then I got married and I was looking for loads of honeymoon clothes, like resort wear. And this was in 2014. So back then, believe it or not, so long ago, but there was nothing.
And also no one really now I feel like everyone has a brand.
Yeah.
Whereas then,
it was and you've hit the nail on. That was essentially the market that I was trying to infiltrate. That kind of like mid-market. We had the high street, a very strong high street at that point. Also, we thought, you had your top shops and your Miss Selfridge and all this kind of stuff. And then you had your Net-a-Porters and Matches, but there was nothing bridging that gap.
Yeah.
Because if you think that long ago, 10 years ago, barriers to entry to start a business were just too high. We didn't have our own social media. Marketing was really expensive. We didn't have Shopify. You'd have to spend lots of money on starting your own business. So I realized that there was this gap in the market.
There also wasn't, there probably was, the podcasts were around then probably, but not at this level.
Gosh, not at all.
Whereas now you get so much free advice and information.
Absolutely.
So
and you
were
can
ahead of the
self-promote.
curve.
Well, I think I was just lucky that I rode the curve rather than being ahead of it, in the sense that I was aware that Instagram had literally just launched. Like, it might have been around for like a year. And I started to really see how powerful it could be. Yeah. So simultaneously to coming up with this idea, it kind of everything fell into place. I spent a lot of my time growing up in the south of France. So I was like, oh my gosh, great resort where I used to spend half my life in the south of France. I'll call it Pampelone, which is the beach down there, where I basically spent my every summer growing up. And everything fell into place, and I got this concept and I really liked it. I got an investment from the Virgin startup scheme, which isn't around anymore, sadly, I don't think, but it was absolutely amazing, where you had a board of mentors, you went and got some investment, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about me on the internet that I, got loads of money from my husband or like my family or whatever, and actually I didn't take a penny from any of them. I literally got myself a startup loan. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to be accountable, and went from there. And like I said, it was just when Instagram started. So I really rode the wave of Instagram being this really powerful tool.
I think as well, by the way, just on the startup loan, I think there are schemes now.
There are so many.
What's the one that Rosie's doing?
So she is doing one with Goldman Sachs, and
that's more like mentoring.
That's more mentoring. But actually, if you Google it, there are so many small business loans out there, and
but they also give
schemes.
You that mentoring on the side, which is amazing.
I think you're absolutely right. Having that mentoring is really important. I think when so many people come to me and ask me how they start a business, like what to do, the two key things I say to people before they even come up with an idea or even have an idea are, number one, make sure you've got the funds to do it. And to do it properly. I'm not saying get investment, but I'm saying get a loan. Make sure you can cover yourself. Make sure you can live while setting up this business. And with that comes like a time constraint as well. So you're covering yourself, your salary essentially, until you start making money.
So how much of the loan did you get to start?
My first loan was £20,000.
Okay.
And then that had to increase quite significantly. All that money went on stock, essentially. I begged, borrowed, and stole to get the business off the ground. My brother-in-law's a designer and did all my branding, and he had a friend that I paid like £600 to put a website together for me. It was all of that type of thing, which I also think is really key in starting a business, really exploiting your network.
And being creative. And I think you have taking that loan from the Virgin rather than family or your husband or anything like that did keep you accountable and did force you to be creative with your choice of where you're putting the investment into and where you can be a bit more frugal and creative.
And I think we have this conversation a lot, and obviously you talk about it a lot, but when you started your business, people think, oh, you need so much to do it, and you say, no, it was literally me and my camera. You literally did that on, you found out how to use Vimeo, you did it yourself. Like, even now your business is obviously very successful, but even now there's certain things that people probably wouldn't realize behind the scenes, how much you guys are creative and that you do yourselves rather than outsourcing so much. And that was the same for me. I think it's really important to be creative, figure out how to do it, and exploit your network.
I remember seeing your mum and your sister on your photo shoots and things like
always.
that.
Yeah, my mum was like holding the reflector, the big gold thing, like this. My sister was like the assistant, like running off and getting like waters for the models.
But those are the moments that you look back on and you're just like, oh, the chaos of it all was just so, it's like magical to look back. At the time, you're like, one day this is going to be a nice story.
You're right. But you know what? It's also really fun to take people along the journey with you. And that's another principle I really say to people. When I first started Pampelone, I was so embarrassed. Obviously, like my mum knew and my husband knew and like people vaguely knew. But until I kind of had to put it out there, I didn't. And I remember setting up an Instagram that was just like inspiration at the time. And we got to about 5,000 or 6,000 followers, which way back then was like quite a lot. Considering we didn't have a product
brand,
then. It was just like inspiration. And at that point we had nothing, and I didn't tell anyone, didn't tell any friends, because I was really nervous, and I was really not embarrassed but afraid of what the judgment or whatever. And actually then when I
did tell
was forced to, I saw that it reaped so many benefits, and I look back as having done that as something that I wouldn't do again. I think exploiting your network and really taking people along that journey is really important.
As soon as you can.
Because you know what? In this world, most people are great and people want to support you.
Want to see you succeed.
Yeah, I've got so many friends that are entrepreneurs, and I'm just so, like we were having this conversation before, I would do anything to help anyone, you know, that I could. And I think people want to support people. There's so many people out there that can and have amazing skills that can help you. And people are willing and wanting to do that. So it's daunting, but put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And
also go to these free events that are, or like that even
100%.
You know, like that red thing that I went to. Go to those events because
you'll
be surprised. You're learning
and network.
You're networking. You'll be surprised at who you meet or what you discover, and just try. And I know it's so easy said than done.
Yeah.
Because I was so shy when I was starting Pilly and Kiki. So when I would have been at that event, I would have been terrified to go over to someone. But now I'm like, I force myself to do it, and it pays off. Because if you go to someone at that event and you say, oh, I'm starting a brand, they'll probably say me too. And then you'll say, oh, well, how are you finding this? And you share your issues, share your contacts. So just put yourself out there a bit more.
I completely agree. And also on that note, not only is really, putting yourself out there, go to as many networking events, meet as many people, talk about your brand. Another one of my key business principles that I tell people, I laugh because it's so ridiculous, but it's hype creates hype.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, in this day and age, women tend to be worse at this than men, but women tend to play themselves down a little bit.
Yes.
And I think obviously now I'm a brand consultant. I work with lots of businesses. 95% of them, I'd say, are women-led businesses. And people really, play themselves down. Whereas actually, the principle that hype creates hype is a really powerful one. So I'll give you an example. When I used to have Pampelone when I first started, I learned that principle quite early on from what I'd seen with other entrepreneurs. And actually, if I was at an event and I met someone and I was like, oh yeah, my name's Holly, I've just started this brand. I mean, it's probably a bit rough, I've only got a few things and we've only just started. People are a bit like, oh yeah, that's nice. Whereas if I go in really assertive and I'm like, hi, I'm Holly, I've got this brand Pampelone, we've just launched on Selfridges or Neiman's or whatever, and which obviously was true. I'm not lying about that, but it's just positioning.
Be able to back up.
Let's make sure it's true. But actually, creating in a really assertive way of talking about your brand is really important. And actually, if you do go to all these networking events, what you'll realize is so much will come from it. Like I remember we were stocked on a really big US retailer, and we got them, and I got the meeting with the buyer through word of mouth from someone. They'd heard me speak somewhere, and someone put them in touch with someone. It's one of those things. And I think when you realize that this industry is actually really small, and everyone's talking to everyone, everyone's talking to everyone, word of mouth, and being assertive in the way that you talk about your brand is really important, because I will always put people forward for things and put people in touch. Like, as you said, I'm quite good at like always telling people, oh, you need to use this, really this, all this type of thing. If I'm confident about them, if someone came up to me and was like, oh,
So you buy into someone. Backs themselves.
Exactly. Hype creates hype. And
but
I
you
think
can also
be assertive.
Train that in yourself.
It's 100% a training thing.
You can just almost trick your mind and train that and just build that in.
But sometimes it's not even tricking. It's true. It's just learning how to talk about yourself.
Exactly. And, rehearse it and just with your friends, talk about it with your family. And I think another tip that I had on that I once had this public speaking meeting with this lady, and she was amazing. And she taught me that you've obviously got your general brand message that is just the common thread through everything in your story. But she said, have a goal with each meeting that is slightly different and specific to that meeting. It's not just, every podcast, every meeting is the same. You have to really think about the audience in each one and tailor it to that. So beforehand, kind of getting into the zone with that.
Good.
And then you can focus on that clear, concise message in that one occasion.
That's really smart. I've actually never that before, but something I wish I'd have known. But you're right. That's really, for example, knowing your audience is obviously an important thing that we all know, but actually really thinking and honing it down to the point of
your listener,
targeting your message. The message of what you're saying. And I suppose, that is really important. And I wish that's a great tip, Bryony. That's a brilliant one. That's a really good one. Thanks.
No, but having that kind of that goal, like for example, if it is a podcast. Okay, let's say I'm going, this was the example this lady gave me. She was like, if you're going on a podcast with, I'm trying to think, Nigella Lawson, your listener is going to be different to going on to the Skinny Confidential. So how are you really going to target that listener, relate to that listener, give that listener a solution to their
how to bring it back to your business in a way that they're going to really digest and feel that it's for them as well.
Exactly. And I've got we'll get onto branding, but I've got a book that's kind of related to that as well. But anyway, sorry, back to
great.
Pampelone.
But that was it. So I launched the business. I really rode the wave of Instagram, and I think what's really good to kind of understand is that. So previous to me starting Pampelone, maybe even like a year or two before, there were no mid-market brands. They didn't exist. It was the high street, it was the high end, there was nothing in between. And then with Instagram and with Shopify, barriers to entry for launching a business became a lot lower. So people started doing it, but I was one of the early adapters. I was one of the, I was in that wave of the earliest. So Instagram was so much less effective in functionality, but more effective in terms of like
you could
clout.
Make a splash.
You could. Oh my god! I had like influencers where one could, because instead of people following 1,000 influencers, people would literally follow 15.
Yeah.
And they were their go-to at that time. So someone could wear something, and I'd literally sell.
It wasn't
1,000 of them in a day, which for me at the time was huge. Whereas these days, even with big brands paying people all this money, it's so oversaturated. And now I almost, when people talk to me about marketing and what I did, and even though I think I was really creative, I really big broad style was had to do everything I could to kind of sell, like push the business. I was like such a hustler. In a lot of ways it was easier in the sense that a lot more things had a lot more cut through, whereas these days
it's hard to stand out.
Everyone has a brand. There are millions and millions and millions and millions of brands. Everyone has the opportunity to have a brand, which means there's so much noise.
Yeah.
And with that noise comes options for customers. So actually, customer loyalty is at like an all-time low because there are just so many options. Yeah. Whereas, back in the day there were less. So actually these days I think it's harder for brands to create like cut through on a social media and with marketing because you're competing against just so many people. So I was luckier back in the day that with what we did,
we were able
to stand out a lot more.
How do you think, obviously the brands now that are doing so well are the ones that stand out the most and that have that kind of community feel and customer loyalty and also a different customer experience and are communicating their message effectively. How would you go about giving someone advice to make their brand stand out?
I think there's a few key things. that I think are really important. And I think going back to that principle that now we're in such an oversaturated market, you have to have really solid foundations for your business. Customers can cut through the bullshit essentially these days. You know, there's so many brands doing it well and so many brands doing it essentially. People can cut through the crap. So I think firstly you need a really strong foundation for your brand, and by that, exactly going back to what you said, it's having a clear message, knowing exactly who you are and knowing who your customer is. You know, there are brands that I go into these days who, you know, big brands. I was with a brand actually a couple of weeks ago who, you know, multi-million pound turnover business, and actually they were marketing and spending all this money, and the reason they actually brought me in was they were saying that their social media strategy wasn't working, and they were spending all this money on it and all these agencies and everything like that, and it just wasn't working. So I kind of analysed the data and was kind of going through it, and actually turned around and I was actually like, I don't think you're marketing the right people. And a brand making that much money were basically
not knowing
making assumptions on their customer. And I think that's something that we all that we all do. I did that with Pampelone. I remember for ages thinking my customer was like me at the time, like a young 20s. And actually when I analysed the data, it was a mid-30 something young mum, yummy mum, lots of disposable income. That was my key customer. So obviously then I had to pivot my marketing, and obviously it was a lot more effective to suit that customer. And similarly with this company a couple of weeks ago, it was the same. And we realised that actually when we analysed the data, the customer was very different. So actually the reason it wasn't working was they were targeting the wrong people. So it's such a basic marketing principle. But in order for your brand to work, you need to know who you are, what you stand for, but also who you are talking to, like who is your customer and what do they do. And I think something that I've done with you as well, that I think is really good, is when you're talking about marketing, really spell out in terms of your existing customers, your potential customers, and in terms of like your low-hanging fruit, people that might follow you on Instagram already, and
maybe
you're
aren't
completely
converting.
new. And then what you can do from there. So what I always say to my clients is put a big marketing calendar together. You know, say you've got 2,000 followers on Instagram and you're, you know, even if you're a small business, 2,000 followers on Instagram, and even like a marketing database of like, I don't know, even like 100 people, you know, that doesn't have to be like a huge business. They are your existing customers, and don't ignore them, and figure out what their touch points are going to be with your business that week, that month, that year, and how can you constantly keep them coming back to your business. And I think there's a really cool principle that I listened to on a podcast not long ago, which I think is really amazing. And it's basically, with all this noise going on that we keep talking about with so many brands, we're being marketed every minute of every day. Every time we open Instagram, there's so many ads. It's just everywhere. There's no loyalty. So actually the brands that are succeeding at the moment are ones that really value their core customer. And I think when you value your core customer and keep them coming back, that's a really great foundation to build your business from. Also, when you have a core group that really love your business, that's word of mouth. You know, you're going to create word of mouth marketing, and that is more valuable, proven time on time, than any other form of marketing.
It's so powerful.
Have
you read the book Build a Story Brand, or How to Build a Story Brand? It's so good. I've been reading it lately, and it's basically, it talks about you should think of your brand as a movie. So in your movie, there's a hero. Your customer is the hero. So you know everything about this hero, you know every inch of their life, and then the hero finds a guide. Then there's an issue. Then there's a guide that comes into the story that is supposed to help this hero along its way and avoid the kind of negativity or the issues that might come up. And then that guide shows the hero the solution. So it's basically kind of going back to basics and saying that your customer needs to be your hero, which obviously customer is key and everything, but really understanding that customer, but understanding what that customer is scared of, what that customer wants to avoid, and the solution you're providing them. And it is such a simple thing, but the book honestly is so helpful to anyone having a brand.
I think that's actually a really interesting way of like making it come to life.
But also giving like I was talking to my friend the other day, she's got a business, and I was like, you need to actually create a person in your mind that is your customer, because who she thought her customer was completely
it's like,
wrong.
what do they used to call them? Pen portraits in like marketing.
Yeah, and
and
it's like you need to give them a name, like give them, what do they do, where do they eat in
where
London,
do they shop,
what are they spending on luxury items.
You know what, you're absolutely right. And when I get people to like plug out this marketing calendar to their existing clients, people maybe that follow them on Instagram haven't quite, or know who they are through word of mouth, but haven't quite taken the plunge to like use that business yet. You then have to think, okay, how am I going to get them to convert? So actually putting together these like pen portraits and thinking about them is really important. So for Pampelone, I'd be like, okay, what do they do when they wake up in the morning? What do they eat for breakfast? Where, you know, how do they get to work? What do they do for work?
Exactly. Do they have kids, you know?
And then you think, okay, am I going to do a partnership? You know, everyone loves the summer with me. Okay, do they go on a holiday? Am I going to do a partnership? I'm going to approach like sun cream brands and sunglasses brands. You've got to think about the touch points and what makes sense for your brand.
And it also helps you think outside the box and think differently, think creatively. And those are the concepts that do so well. That just land.
I agree.
Like doing something with a bit, for example, I'm planning a paddle social event, and people would be thinking, well, she does Pilates, why is she doing paddle? But actually there's such a, like, personally I love paddle, but also creating that will give me, you know, a link into more of a male market. And there are it's many,
also a synergy,
exactly,
but also
and
creating
not
a lifestyle.
Samey, it's something different. And I think
that's non-competing with what you do, because people, let's face it, I do Pilates, but I also like to play tennis. Not paddle yet, but I do you know what I mean? There are other things, and I think when you're cutting through into a lifestyle, and when you cut through into a lifestyle, you create a brand that is a solid foundation in someone's core being, and they're going to keep coming back to you, and that creates that customer loyalty
and that community
that you constantly crave, and that provides creates successful businesses.
There's another book called Start With Why. Have you read that one?
Yes, I have.
That's a really good one. And I think, again, these books are often so simple, but it really is so important. Everything you do with your business, you have to go back to, okay, why are we doing this? What is the end goal? What are we hoping to achieve? And then keep asking yourself that question with every idea that gets thrown at you, because we all get so excited. I love
creative ideas. I agree.
So
collaborations.
Sometimes when we're thinking of a new challenge, I mean, it starts wild, like completely crazy, and then we're like, okay, but actually it's going to be more impactful. Like, for example, the peaches. We just sent out a box of peaches, and that was my most my highest performing engagement of the whole year. Box of peaches. So it's sometimes starting with the why. You can get a little bit crazy, but keep asking yourself the why throughout, and then you'll kind of dial it down to something more powerful and impactful.
Agreed. And I think that's really important. I think what I see with some of my clients at the moment is they're really they're doing all these fun things and these amazing things, but going back to that why question, it's almost and this is obviously more of like a marketing principle than anything, it's, are you marketing for like influencers and for socials, or actually are you doing something that's going to impact your customer? And I think,
like, are you doing it for an ego purpose? But then again, there are certain things that I think are brand building,
of course,
but there's a difference between ego-driven ideas and actual proven brand building activations. And so I think it's knowing the difference.
And going back to those basic, I think from the conversation we've been having, I think the key message that I would say is constantly go back to those basic marketing principles. Like we keep saying, it's who is your customer, the why that you were saying, do you have, you know, the time and the financial ability to create this business, and do your market research is another key one that I know we haven't talked about, but is so important. I think test your market, like, you know, look into competitive brands and understand why they have and haven't failed. Like on the side, I know, you know, I'm developing an app at the moment that's like that I won't go into because it's very long-winded, but actually the concept keeps ever changing, because we are doing research and realizing, okay, this one, so-and-so's tried to do this and it hasn't worked for this reason. Okay, so why hasn't that not worked, and how can we pivot to make our idea work.
Pivot's
and
my
I think
favourite word.
not being is such a good word.
Pivot.
But also not being afraid to pivot your brand, because I think there's so many people,
and quick as well.
Quick, yeah.
Don't
you have to
dwell
be
on
reactive.
it. Keep moving.
Yeah, and obviously you want to be emotionally invested in your business. My business was like my baby, but I think something that I've learned after having sold Pampelone is not to be as emotionally invested in big decisions. So, for example, as much as you want, being emotionally invested obviously has so many benefits, and it's great that you put so much passion into your business and all of this stuff. But actually, sometimes decisions do have to just be very business minded.
Yeah,
and being okay to differentiate those decisions.
I saw something on Instagram that was yesterday that was, don't stress about making the right decision, make the decision right. So don't, because so often we can, and I think that's again going back to people just never starting, we can just overanalyze, overthink, overstress, and not actually start and not make any decision.
Yeah, you're right.
And sometimes a decision is better than just sitting and waiting and keep it moving.
Yeah.
And then figure it out along the way, and you learn so much from that. And moving quickly, because also you don't have time to just sit on it forever.
You're right. I think it was Richard Branson once said, it was that thing, it was like, just say yes and learn how to do it later.
Yeah.
And
we are loving the quotes.
Oh my God.
I've just got another one that
literally. And that was, I remember like when I had the business, I remember like within a couple of months of launching, I managed to bag myself. We did when we launched in the UK, thank goodness we did really well. We sold out most of the items within the first 8 weeks. So I said to myself, I set myself a goal, and I was like, right, I'm booking a flight to New York, and after the success in the UK, I had some UK retailers coming to me, and that was a real shock for me, because I didn't think I would be doing wholesale for at least a year or something. Yeah. Anyway, so that kind of put the like seed in my head that I was like, okay, if the UK people are coming to me, I can do this in the US. Way bigger market, bigger population, people
covering different times of the year.
Yeah. So I booked a flight and I said, right, I'm going to do this. I am going to have these meetings, whether I like it or not. And I literally worked all through the night. I was on LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever, trying to find different buyers' details. And then obviously I didn't know their email addresses, so I set up like a fake email address so I could test their emails. And it was like, so say for example, the buyer was called like Bryony Deery at Saks. Yeah. I'd be like b.deery at Saks, Bryony.deery. I was like trying to test the format. Yeah. And honestly, I was like up all night. I was so like, it was amazing. It was such an amazing time where it was exciting. Everything was exciting. Anyway, got my meeting. So I remember the first time we went to New York, we had Shop Bop, Bloomingdale's, this thing called Anything But Water. There was like a few of the retailers out there, and I was like, okay, amazing. And it was only when I was on the flight that I was a bit like, I've never been in a wholesale meeting before. I don't really know what I'm doing. And funnily enough, it was one of our mutual friends that we know, Lily Fortescue, who at the time was involved in like she's like,
babe, you'll be fine, just completely black.
She was just like,
so mad.
But one of the best things she told me, she just said, literally just be assertive.
She
probably won't even remember she probably won't even remember that she told me this, but she was like, just be assertive, be knowledgeable, and just say you'll get back to them, and just like work it out later, and just say you have to follow up on an email because you have to check with different people in the business. So I was like, fine. And I remember being in a Shop Bop but that's
kind of going back to the hype creates hype, like
there you go, just be assertive. Obviously don't sound stupid, but so I kind of had to do that when they asked me if I could do consignment and do this thing called like 30 net 10 or whatever, and I had no idea what it meant. Absolutely no idea what it meant. So I was just like, we'll look into that. We'll do the numbers. We'll run the numbers and see if that will work. And it obviously worked. And
then you just Google everything.
I realised what it was and obviously didn't do it. But point being, it was such a great principle to just kind of just go back to that thing of just do it. Just go it, be assertive. And ride the wave, because it's exciting. Like having a business is really about exciting.
Failure. The quote I was going to say is from the Shopify. I think it's Shopify CEO. Failure is just the discovery of something that didn't work.
Yeah.
And I think when you take the emotion out of failure,
I was going to say it goes back to the emotions.
Okay, great. That didn't work. Why didn't it work? And really analyze the data behind, as much information as you can get. Look at why it didn't work, and then think of ways. The next thing, and then. Bit by bit you tweak that, don't you?
And I think something I've learned, and like I said, everything that I've used as business principles and things that work for me might not work for everyone else. And obviously there's different businesses and they all have different quirks and things that make them work. But I think that also goes back to taking the emotion out of it. I think with Pampelone, it was my baby. If someone like, you know, I remember the first 6 months, if I had a customer
return or something.
Yeah, if I had or like a complaint, I would like cry and I'd be like, oh my God, what am I doing? Whereas actually, and like I said, that has its benefits. You want to be like emotionally invested. You want to love what you do. You want to care. But at the same time, now I've, you know, been involved in businesses since where it's very much a commercial decision. And that's not to say I don't care, but I think, like you're saying, being able to pivot and say, okay, that didn't work, that failed. Okay, let's start this thing new. I'm not a crumbling heap on the ground. No. I just go, okay, cool.
And it takes too much time to be like that. And I had to learn that with Pilly and Kiki and my dad, because he was packing the majority of the orders. Even when we get orders from Harvey Nichols, my dad was sending them out.
Yeah, that was me and my mum.
Yeah.
My mum had to go and
it's so much fun. And my dad I would be like, right, Dad, this is how you put the tissue paper, the sticker, the bow, and blah, blah, blah. And then if if I got a return, after a while, I was like, okay, fair enough. Like, I return things.
Yeah,
obviously.
It could just be doesn't fit properly
and
or something.
Swimwear. It's quite a specific size. Yeah. My dad would take it so bad, it would like ruin his day. I'm like, Dad, we have to keep it moving.
Yeah, but it is like that, right? Because you want, and I think, like I said, there's an element of that
there's a balance. Yeah.
But an element of it that you're literally like, oh my God. In fact, I remember one of my best friends, Lizzie, Elizabeth Scarlett, she's got this amazing brand Elizabeth Scarlett. It's like these embroidered pouches.
So
unbelievable.
Cute.
Anyone, they've got like a fact.
The little turtle one. So sweet.
Oh my God. Like such an incredible business. We started our businesses at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
So I think I had a lot of success very quickly. And then obviously you had kids, didn't do anything, you know, sold it. She was
didn't do anything, just casually sold the business.
Sold the business,
really
had kids. But point being, she was very much laying the foundations. And I think some things that really were detrimental to my business is we did so well so quickly, the foundations weren't there. And that's why
you struggled with the growth, the speed.
We struggled with the growth and
I
the
think
scaling.
that's a big thing. Can you give your tips and advice on that?
Sure.
Because sometimes you do so well and you're a one-man band. I know, I'm like sometimes asking for a friend. But I remember,
not me at all. Yeah.
I remember when I was training people in person, and I was getting so many inquiries, and I was like, I really don't want to say no to this and blah blah blah. But I was like, this growth is too quick for me to catch up with.
Yeah.
How do you deal with quick growth?
So firstly,
without
if you're
losing out on
like if you're experiencing quick growth, firstly, well done, because that's only a good thing, right? That means that you've got a good problem. The top 3 things I would say is don't think you can do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Because that is something that I did, and it was really not good because I couldn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't an expert in my field. In every field, sorry. You know, it's that thing. Something of trade, masters of none. I don't know what I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? And firstly, don't think you can do it all by yourself, because also when you think you can do it by yourself, things start to falter, and you know, customers don't get the best experience. The product will inevitably be impacted from that. And I think I hear lots of entrepreneurs.
And your time is probably better spent doing something else.
Exactly, and building the larger business. And I think there's nothing wrong with working late nights. So, you know, as an entrepreneur, I think when we were setting up businesses, that is natural. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying
it should be like that.
When you're at a point where things are starting to falter, that's the point you need to kind of look elsewhere. And I made the mistake of hiring lots of juniors when I felt like I was in that position, because I thought I still wanted control over every area of the business. And thinking that they could just help me, and actually that was not the right thing to do.
So you think actually
really looking at the business structure
and actually hiring someone,
a smart, intelligent person
like Sarah,
who, if you don't know, is Bryony's amazing.
I honestly
Sarah,
couldn't live
who
without
was incredible.
Sarah.
In fact, Sarah.
I tell Casper, I'm like, I'd rather you left me than Sarah. but I think it's so true, and that's a good point. You think that if you're
it's an
able
investment.
to,
Yeah, this is it. It's like, you're right. It's an investment.
even if it's having someone like you, for example, a consultant that you're able to pay maybe
a day rate
rate, you know, however much, maybe twice a month or something like that. But having that guidance, that real like high level guidance, helps so much. And then hopefully the business will then grow and you're able to then increase that and then go to part-time and full-time.
And exactly, like, you know, going back to what we just said before, if you're in a period of fast growth, you're in a position where you're probably investable as a business.
Yeah.
And if you're in a position where you're going so quickly, you're expanding, you don't know what to do, you are in a position where you will probably be very eligible for business loans. Not huge, you know, it doesn't have to be huge, but it can, you know, there's business loans, there's overdraft facilities, there's so many things that you can have these days. One thing that, if you do have a small business, I urge every business to look into. I'm still like shocked how many people don't know about it. If your business is less than, I think, 6 years old, you're eligible for a government scheme called, well, there's an SEIS or EIS scheme, which essentially means that someone can invest in your business and get tax relief. So
it's amazing. It's a no-brainer for them.
So I invest personally. My husband and I, we invest in businesses.
Yeah.
And not only do we want to invest in the businesses and want them to succeed, we get quite a significant benefit. Tax relief from it. So actually, when people know about that, and it's way easier to go to investors, and there's a huge pot of investors out there. I'm not talking like massive Peter Jones investors, people like me who are just like essentially an average person who likes business and works in business, who are happy to do it. And if you went to someone for like 10, 20 grand to invest in staff for a fast growing business, for me, that's a no-brainer. Of course I'd want to invest. So I think that's be confident to know that actually you know, going back to you with Pilly and Kiki, me with Pampelone, there was a point where for the first 8 months, I was still doing all the picking and packing, and me and my mum were like preparing orders for like big retailers and stuff like that. It was ridiculous.
It's the most
and I'm like, why am I doing this than actually not getting more orders? And actually, I took stock. I wish I'd taken this advice sooner, or someone had given me this advice sooner. Whereas actually, if you're in a fast growing business, you're in a position to get that investment. I got a loan, another loan, and invested in stock that way, got a fulfillment house, like a warehouse, to do the picking and packing. So that took such a load off me to be able to actually focus on the business.
And the marketing and really pushing the product and focus on actually selling the product.
Exactly. So I think first bit of advice, if you have a fast growing business, is employ people who are experts in their field. As soon as you can. As soon as you can. And
another point on that, if it's not working, I think fire fast. We speak about that a lot.
Oh my gosh, yes. Literally.
Because the time spent
nurturing staff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of questions that people ask me about is staff. Who do I employ first? How does it happen? All this kind of stuff. Or what if it doesn't work? And I agree with you.
Having a probation, and also it's more about the fit for them as well. Like,
it's both of you.
Is it the right fit for both?
And are their skills actually right for this specific business? You're right. I think also something that we've spoken about, having a negative energy impact in your business can actually be so detrimental
and costly.
You have to just get rid.
And have potentially, for both of you, have that probation period and ask for, like, now when I'm hiring, I ask for like almost a bit of a pitch on a specific thing. So I give them like a project, a task to show me, because I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Or you thought of that, and you're thinking, you know, having that proactive energy around you.
Proactive energy is the best energy.
Amazing.
In whatever position, whether it was someone picking and packing my product, an assistant, a head of marketing, whatever, proactive energy is my best.
Yeah, it's the best.
It's the best trait, I think, in people.
Because you feel you have that kind of anything is possible energy, and then your team, you become like a bit of a family. You want to hang out together socially as well, and you want to do things.
It's just it's a positive
it's just
energy.
So fun,
it's
and
nice.
you're excited to come into work. So yeah, I mean, not only are you amazing at building a brand with your, you know, Pampelone and everything, but you're very good at personal branding. What would be, I'm just so conscious of the time.
Oh my God.
Because you just have so much wisdom. But what would be your top tips for someone that, because it is so important to have your personal brand connected to your brand these days. What would be your tips on that?
Firstly, if you're a brand, what's something that's really worked for me is becoming essentially part of your brand. You as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, even if you like to be behind the scenes, you are as much of your brand as your brand is. When you're talking to people, you are embodying your brand, so just be conscious of that. Secondly, very boring, we've talked about it before, but it's just going back to knowing who you are and your customer is. And thirdly is consistency. And I think something that people struggle with is consistency, and whether that is in branding, whether it's in product, whether it's in communications, consistency is really important. And if anyone wants to know why that's important, there's a really good podcast with the founder of Airbnb that Stephen Bartlett did on his podcast, and it is amazing. And he, you know, his level of wanting like a seamless customer experience, from like your customer email to the minute you go on the website to social media, essentially consistency of the brand, and the benefits of that are just so key. So I think whether it's you've got a small business and whether it's just posting on Instagram regularly,
having that
branding,
discipline.
having the discipline,
almost having
that
those and on that, just having that kind of checklist that every day you need to be like, okay, have I done my story, my daily story? Have I checked in on, you know, having those kind of discipline points each day creates that consistency, I think.
And I think this is not necessarily a point on branding, but I think a general point for anyone wanting to start a business. It's so simple, but get Google Analytics. Yeah. It's an app you can get against your website. I was even talking to someone yesterday with rather a significant business at a lunch, and they didn't have it, but this person was again really confused as to what social media, what press, etc. was working for her. And essentially, for anyone that doesn't know, obviously Google Analytics, you plug it into your website. So for example, let's say Bryony's website, you can literally go on it. And I think for me, obviously there's other tools to it that are really valuable for other things, like knowing what bounce rates are on what page. Maybe there's certain pages not working, or that need more work or whatever. But I think for me, the most important thing is knowing where your inbound links are coming from. So who is driving the traffic to your website? So in layman's terms, that's what's okay. So say Bryony's got her Pilates website. Was she in the Times magazine, or was it Sally in Nottingham that had put her on her blog? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and you knowing where
spikes.
That's coming from. So, and I guarantee you, 99% of the time, it will be different to what you assume. So obviously, there's amazing marketing.
It's so interesting, and you're always shocked and surprised.
I remember having like a lady in Manchester who every time that she posted on her Instagram, not many followers, but she just must have had like loads of wealthy friends who copied and every time she posted our new season, everything would sell out. So I then invested in her. She became quite a good friend of mine. Yeah. And I used to take her for lunch at the start of the season. So essentially, get Google Analytics, know where your biggest traction is coming from, and invest in those areas. So for example, don't spend all these hours trying to get in all these fancy influencers pages when they're actually not driving any traffic to your site. It's not to say it's not good for brand building, but you know, and actually when it could be a smaller 100% people who are driving the traffic. Yeah, so and I think get Google Analytics.
And just on the influencers, knowing who converts, a good tip is also go onto their profile and look in the comments. What podcast was it that I listened to lately? It was like a comment that says, "You're so pretty," is like that's not going to drive any sales to, you know,
the brand that they're trying. Yeah,
exactly.
Why are people looking at that?
Where's your skirt from?
Yeah,
you know, that is the so it's just such a simple thing. But if you are going to gift an influencer, really do your research and check, because product is so expensive, and you have to know that it's an informed decision that you're making. And I think that's a good tip. Really good. We're actually this afternoon going through all of our analytics and everything. We're getting like a year breakdown month by month.
That is literally like porn to me. I'm
so
that person
excited.
where I'm like, oh my god,
well, honestly, we
amazing.
Can't wait. And also
get off on analytics.
We'll know what we'll do is we'll look at the spikes, and then I'll also bring up my Instagram analytics. And I mean, there's just so many tools that you can use. And then on that day, when we look back, I'll scroll back and notice
see what you
exactly.
It's making informed decisions, and I think we're so lucky with everything being online and social. there is traceability and track, like you can literally, everything's tangible. You can understand why, how, when, where's it coming from. And even with something like Shopify, and my website was a very simple Shopify website, which I'm sure the majority of everyone has, or even WooCommerce, they all have these analytics functions, but no one knows, but very little people use them, or, you know.
And you, like, YouTube's
use
your
them.
best friend. Look, like YouTube, any thought that comes into your head.
Yeah, just,
how do I use Google Analytics? Search it. I mean, there's just so many tools. And I also think another tip that I would say that I kind of use in my day-to-day is I try not to follow too many people that are doing what I'm doing, in terms of I don't really want to be looking at what they're doing too closely, because that's not going to spark my creativity at all. And even subconsciously, even without knowing, I might do something because I've seen it. You know, how often do we just scroll and we go into this like hole? And so actually following brands or people that are in other spaces, other categories that really inspire you, and see what they're doing, and see if there's any way that you could creatively almost use their, like, for example, Triangle, Erin Deering, something. Erin from Triangle, the founder, she is incredible.
Have you just seen the new collection they've done, which is like toweling?
No. Oh my god,
it's because it's
that brand has just
really
nailed it, and she is amazing. So just search her on podcasts and look at all the ones that she's done. She gives so many tips. But one of the things that was really cool with on the topic of marketing is she talked about the FOMO method, which she basically had this goal. I think it was Kendall Jenner. She wanted to have Kendall Jenner wear her bikini. So she was like, okay, Kendall Jenner doesn't know who I am. She's not going to reply to me. So I'm going to gift every single person in her circle.
I did that with Pampelone.
It's so smart, and I promise you it works. She's gifted every single person in her circle, or got in touch with someone like her stylist, the girl that she goes to the gym with, whatever, and gifted everyone. And then Kendall emailed her personally and was like, hey.
It's honestly,
because they're like, why don't I get like, I'm the famous one here. So I think that's another really good a good tip, and quite, you know, it is creative, and thinking creatively is so fun. So yeah, that would
interestingly be. That's how I got Pampelone on the Kardashian. When I did the kids collection, that's how I got Pampelone on the Kardashian kids. That exact method. Never got the actual stuff on the adults. They clearly didn't like it. But the kids, we launched a kids collection.
Oh my god!
And I did exactly
I wish you
the
still
same.
had, because I would be covering Aria in all Pampelone.
To be fair, my kids sometimes say, "Mummy, did you keep some for us?" And I was like, "Oh god, I thought I did, but I didn't."
Oh no!
This now it's all sold out.
It was so cute.
It was very sweet. But I did the same. I remember, you know, like Chloe had like Khadija and Malika, like all their like friends, and I literally gifted all their friends.
It's so
weirdly
good.
Not. It kind of wasn't with the view to necessarally get it on. I didn't think that would ever happen, but more I was just like, they're good people to get it on. And then I got an email from Courtney's
stylist,
PA, PA at the time, being like, "Can you send some stuff?" So I sent a massive box, and they all went on holiday together. So it was like Penelope North, and they were all. I've got like the best picture of like them all wearing it.
Freak out.
And I was like, "What?"
That's amazing. You need to post that.
Look at that.
You need to post that.
I mean, I think I exploited it so much back in the day, I can't do it.
Just bring it out again. Okay, and in your, I mean, I could just talk forever. But what would be your final 3 top pieces of advice for someone going into business?
Someone who hasn't got a business and wants to start a business, I think, lay the foundations for your brand. Understand what it actually takes to start a brand. It's hard.
Yeah.
The time constraints, the financial constraints.
Yeah.
The structure you need in the business to do that.
Don't think like, you know, when people are like, oh, I just really want to manage my own time, and like, it's like, no, your time has never been more managed.
Literally, yeah, exactly.
But I get the idea. Yeah.
So lay the foundations for your brand and be really realistic with yourself.
Yeah.
With how much time it's going to need, how much money it's going to need, how stressful and hard it will be.
If you've got what it takes to make it successful.
And lastly, just do it. Just
Go for it.
Stop talking about it. Just do it. It's fun. And I think there are so many entrepreneurial stories out there for like massive businesses, and it seems so far removed from, you know, like you, if you're in your living room wanting to start something tomorrow, and it can seem quite daunting and quite scary. But actually the journey's really fun, and you might not get to that level. You might just be able to support yourself, which is fantastic. That's such a great place to be in.
But just take the first step.
Do it. Take the first step. It's really fun. It's exciting. And I don't think you'll ever regret it.
Oh, that was such a nice ending. Thank you so much, Holly.
It's a pleasure.
That was amazing. You've just lit a rocket. I was just about to, well, I can't think of anything else to say other than you've lit a rocket inside my heart. But you have. So thank you for that. And hope you guys enjoyed.
Thank you.
Thank you.